Hey, oh, here.
Hello, hello.
Nice. Yeah, it's good to be up, man. It's been yeah, since a while since we caught up. Always fun to hang out with metric style folks.
Yeah. I think this is a space or an interview we've been wanting to do for quite some time, and glad that we're here now. Let's just give a minute or two for everyone to trickle in.
Yeah, give it some time. How's things going at Rated? Is it slammed as usual? Just
Slam, but having fun. Lots of things to anticipate and ship out as you know. A lot of things happening in the protocol, the Ethereum protocol, especially with the Shanghai upgrade coming along. So gotta keep up.
yeah. What's
How about
the
you? Yeah.
I guess the for you, like, is it like kind of getting ready to like be ready with, some wild report like as soon as the upgrade comes out, or is it more just like, I guess, getting things set up to measure what you want to measure, see what changes after the upgrade, after withdrawals come out, and go according to that? Like, I guess, what's the game plan for you guys, since you know I'd say, like, I mean, you particularly, I would say, are probably one of the top three, like, most knowledgeable people about what's going on in staking in the ecosystem. So, you know, I'm always really curious to read your stuff and get your takes on it.
I wish I was top three, but yeah, I think for us, it's just being ready with some table stakes features, right? Once withdrawals come out. Of course, people want to track um, the withdrawal queue, when can they expect withdrawals to come out, like if they exit now, when they get withdrawals, etc. So just managing what will be table stakes features and then try to deliver on that. And for now, that's all I can say. I want a surprise on the upside, of course.
Nice, nice. Yeah,
But
and keep the alpha for later. No, I love that.
yeah. Well, for those who are just joining, you missed like 3 minutes of me being interviewed. Uh, but we'll uh, we'll flip that on its head in a while. Um, I guess we can get started. It's been 3 minutes.
Yeah,
So welcome everyone. I am R plus. You can call me Rob from Metrics DAO, and this is Behind the Charts. It's a series with Metrics DAO about the crypto data community. It serves as a way to get to know and feature some of the best data people in the crypto space, be it analysts, data scientists, engineers alike. For us, as we seek to empower protocols and organizations in the crypto space, it's important for us to empower on-chain data professionals as well and highlight their skills and talents. Before we get started, just some housekeeping. Full interactivity is only on the phone in Twitter Spaces. Thanks, Elon. So if on desktop, please switch over to mobile if you want to speak or use emojis if you're into that. There will also be some attendance rewards. So we will share an attendance form in the comments halfway through the event. So you can claim any X metric tokens and increase your reputation in our community and unlock challenges and other rewards. We also have some intro webinars on Ethereum and Cosmos next week. It'll be given by our education lead, Vaida, and we'll cover core concepts to get anyone up to speed with the basics of these ecosystems, including key features and capabilities and what have you. So if you want to up your expertise or just be more familiar with these ecosystems, join the webinar. We will drop the link in the comments in a few. And yeah, so on Q&A for this interview, during the interview, you can ask your questions in the comments, again, in the right bottom text box. After the interview, you can come on stage to ask questions live. Just use the heart button or raise your hand. And yeah, without further ado, our special guest today is Kofi. Kofi is one of the pioneers in the crypto data space when it comes to using newsletters, most notably Nifty Table and now more recently 0x Trends. But writing newsletters isn't his only talent. He's a skilled data scientist, first and foremost, but also an investor, most recently being a partner at One Confirmation. He's an excellent communicator, a writer, developer, and this next one, I mean this in the most positive way possible. He's a threador with 20K followers on Twitter and a key contributor on some key projects like DeFi Llama. He covers or has covered a variety of topics in the crypto space, such as NFTs, DeFi, hacks, gaming, bridges, L1s, alt L1s, tokenomics. Should I list out some more? Media, social media, liquid staking, payments, investing, venture capital, data infrastructure, and smart contract infrastructure. They say the metrics thou account should mute. Who's a sorry? Who's a Can someone mute the host? Okay, that ruined the flow. Just kidding. They say if a new vertical in crypto is launched, but Kofi hasn't written about it, does it really exist? Well, let's find out from the man himself if this is true. Let's all welcome Kofi.
Thanks again for having me, man.
Glad you're here. How are you doing? Everything good?
Yeah, no, it's been a relatively chill week. Just like sitting on my laptop on the couch, just like messing with Dune and eating takeaway for the past few days. Really good, chill stuff. Watching K-dramas. It's been nice.
Watching K-dramas. We have to get into that later on. So let's get into it. You had a full, so just to jump right in, right? You had a full-time role as a partner at one confirmation that you chose to leave behind. Now you're freelancing and contributing to top-tier projects like DeFi Llama, as mentioned earlier, but not full-time. Plenty of people who follow this series want to break into full-time roles in crypto. However, you went the other way around. Could you give us an insight into the thought process behind your decision and why things might not be so bad, not having a full-time gig?
Yeah, so I mean, I joined one confirmation around when was it? So that was the middle of 2021 was when I first joined, kind of pulled in by Richard, who's been like, a big inspiration for me for a while, Richard Chen. In terms of like OG on-chain data scientist, he's like a real OG, not just in the data science side of things, but early on days of Flashbots was like one of the top 30 MEV searchers and so on. And so I really wanted to work with Richard. That was my first and kind of biggest motivation for wanting to join One Confirmation. And it was a great gig. I mean, they're like super smart guys with like an amazing track record, having led seed rounds of like market leaders like OpenSea and Nexus Mutual and investing in seed and BYDX and all of these big teams. So I learned a lot, but I guess what my problem was that I found after some time was that a lot of the work that you do as a VC analyst is kind of networking type work, like doing like a bunch of calls a day with new teams, trying to figure out, well, actually, what's going on with this product and what's the background of this team and what market are they targeting and all of that stuff. And that's super interesting stuff. But I much prefer to just sit at my laptop and code all day than, have a dozen calls a day. So after a while, the kind of doing that kind of work left me feeling a bit burnt out. And I just wanted to move into a role where I was just doing data stuff all the time. I actually probably in some ways maybe should have left earlier. I had started thinking about it earlier, but I didn't kind of make that move because it didn't seem like a smart decision. Like, oh, you're at this really great firm with this good comp, and like, it's kind of like everything's kind of working out. Why would you change things? But yeah, I think that if you're thinking about leaving somewhere for a few months, at that point you should probably do that. And being free is kind of it's not bad. I think that like there are lots of folk, including like folk in the audience who are probably like doing a few part-time or freelance gigs, or maybe they're doing bounties and like you were saying, maybe want to do a full-time thing. And I guess the grass is always greener on the other side, but it's nice to be able to kind of pick and choose the work I do every week in terms of I mean, I only kind of take on projects that like I find interesting, and I can choose to do that because I'm not like full time tied to anybody. So nobody can really tell me that I have to take on some project or some other project. And I like the aspect of it. And I mean, economically, there's an interesting thing where obviously, like if you're somewhere full time, then you can get, if it's a startup equity or if it's a VC firm carry, and in the long term, that's worth a lot more than like any paycheck. Um, but on a kind of a short term basis, if you string together like a few bounties, part-time gigs and stuff, like especially because there's a weird supply demand thing with data analysts in the space. There's like a lot of projects and not a lot of um, really experienced data people. Yeah, if you mean you string together a few part-time things, you can in some months like make more money than a full-time job would reasonably pay you in a month. So it's not bad. It's definitely not bad.
Yeah, I hear. And uh, you mentioned Richard Chen being an OG arch wizard that you wanted to work with, and it's cool. And forgot to mention, One Confirmation is one of the OG crypto venture capital firms as well. So if you haven't heard of them, you should. They're one of the best. Um, and yeah, I hear you on uh, if you've been thinking about leaving a job for quite a few months, then probably you should just jump and move on to the next. And that you do something that you really want to be doing. Like you mentioned that instead of taking calls all day, you just wanted to code all day. That's what you're doing right now, as you mentioned earlier. Um, Now, speaking of, you mentioned picking and choosing projects that you want to do. Uh, you mentioned that when you on the Twitter thread when you announced that you were leaving One Confirmation, you got a lot of offers from different projects and gigs. Could you tell us about some of the most interesting like DMs you got when it comes to these projects and gigs, and how, and also like some of the ones where you flat out said no and ignored, and why? Just to get a gauge of like the opportunities out there in this space.
Yeah, so I mean, when I first left One Confirmation, I didn't really know what I wanted at the time, and even now I'm still figuring that out. But at the time, I did think that I wanted to do a full-time thing, so there were a lot of opportunities that came up. I would say the kind of categories where, like, um, maybe going to go and work for an L2 or a DeFi protocol, or kind of one of the more data or media businesses in the space. So yeah, I chatted to like a lot of different teams in like all of those niches, right? Trying to figure out the way of things. And then there were also like some like more random things. You like as like if you like put out data stuff, everybody will get those DMs of somebody who's just like, oh, I've got an idea. Like, will you build this for me for free? And like we'll become rich together, YOLO. And it's just like, no, not interested in that. I'm not I mean, even if any of those ideas were good ideas, which they really are, I'm not really interested in kind of being a founder or something along those lines per se. I just want to like make cool stuff with cool people, right? So, um, kind of at the time, joining a team was kind of more the route I was looking for. And like actually, I was really you know, near the end of that phase, I was actually really keen on picking like going to go and work for an L2 like Polygon because yeah, L2s have an interesting thing where uh there's such a diversity of protocols that are built on an L2 that like if you're a data person, there's like a bunch of different like areas you can look into. It's not just that you're doing like one topic necessarily for the next few years. So I kind of found that flexibility interesting. But ultimately, I decided that I don't really want to get a real job this year. So I guess I'm not doing that. It's the current plan.
So no real job this year. Sorry to all the people looking for a full-time stellar analyst, stellar data analyst or data scientist. And and quick word of advice: when you get a DM that says "Let's get rich quick, YOLO," maybe run away.
Yeah,
So it
for
sounds
sure.
like so it sounds like you got a lot of got a lot of interest in the space, and with the many things going on in the crypto industry, um, how do you keep up, and how are you keeping up well with the many topics in this space? Because as mentioned earlier with the in the intro, you write and cover so many topics across multiple like verticals in this space. Like, how do you manage to keep up and keep up well actually with the many things going on?
Yeah, I mean, you think, I guess the real answer is that you don't, right? Because, I mean, it was easier before. Like, I first got into crypto in 2017 through like mining with friends. And like the 2018 bear market was not as interesting as this one. There just wasn't like there wasn't DeFi in the way that we know it now, and like NFT trading like wasn't a huge thing after like CryptoKitties like kind of stopped trending and all of that. Like there just wasn't like it was pretty easy to like be aware of like the few top projects and kind of track those. But nowadays it's just like every other week there's like 100 new startups launching, and like everybody's like trying to do some uh crazy new thing, or like there's some new white paper out, or some new hack, or some new scandal, or yeah, it's pretty impossible to keep up with it. I'm really addicted to Twitter, so I spend way too much time on Twitter, and that somewhat helps, even though it's not even if it's not the best thing. And then like at DeFi Llama, Llama intern maintains this Telegram channel that anybody who's struggling to keep up with stuff should check out. The Telegram channel is called DeFi Llama Roundup, and that like kind of does a good job of summarizing kind of news for the day, news for the week type stuff. I'm pretty sure the link for it will be on the site. Um, but apart from that, I think really it just comes down to like you can't keep up with everything, so you got to pick what stuff to focus on like that week or that month. And I pretty much just go where I'm most interested, right? Because if you're not interested, it's really, really hard to like sit down and like do the, I don't know, 100 hours of work or whatever it actually takes to figure out what some random esoteric like bit of the market is doing right now. Like it is honestly it is a bit of trouble, like kind of getting up to date on any of these things. So yeah, if you're going to do it, you kind of have to care more than a little bit. So, just picking stuff that piques your interest is good.
Right, right. Still gotta pick stuff to focus on, and can't cover everything. But as I mentioned earlier, now that you don't have a set job description or a set of responsibilities that are set in stone or binding through a contract, again, you mentioned gotta pick stuff to focus on. How do you actually decide on what to do on a daily basis? Like, what guides you as a data professional, aside from your curiosity or your interest? Like, um, what how do you sift through the noise and focus on stuff that you want to really focus on?
Yeah, I mean that's a hard question. I wish I had an answer to that. I mean at the moment, how am I doing it right now? Um, I guess I kind of split it up into well, there was a long period of time, like from like October or whenever I quit until um, recently, that like all of the projects I was contributing to for free. And now, like, I'm at the point where I am like starting to take on like more paid work again because, the rent needs to get paid somehow. And so, like,
Totally.
right now, I guess I'm doing things in terms of I'll do the stuff that pays the rent first. So I've got some what's the word dashboards that I'm making for a few projects right now, and I've got some paid work from Alchemy at the minute, and kind of you know do paid work first, and then spend the other time on the passion project stuff like DeFi Llama is keeping those pages up and working on new stuff is more of a passion project thing. And my newsletters, we got the NFT one and then the trends one, more passion project stuff. And with the newsletters, it's good because like those come out. Well, Xerox Trends comes out once every 2 weeks. So there's like a good split of like, oh, I can put that aside now and work on other stuff and then come back to it. Nifty Table, nowadays I just write that whenever I want to. There was a period of like a year or more that I was writing it every single week and I wouldn't miss. Now I just write it whenever I feel like it. So that's also flexible. But yeah, that's how I'm arranging things at the moment. Stuff that pays the bills first, and then stuff that doesn't pay the bills, and then like broken up by the stuff that like happens at a specific time, like trends happens at a specific time.
Yeah, gotta take care of that rent. Yeah, so do the paid work first and spend time on passion projects, and which you have a lot of. Speaking of which, you did a challenge in 2022 actually called 12 Web3. We're gonna bury that term soon. App of 12 Web3 apps in 12 months, where your goal was to build 12 crypto apps in 12 months, which you did by October 2022, ahead of schedule. Um, why did you decide to take this on? Like this huge undertaking of like building, like it's not like building an app, it's something you can just choose to do like on a whim. And you built 12 in 12 months, even sooner. Why did you decide to take this challenge on? And what did you learn by doing this, both in a technical skills level and I guess in an insights you generated?
Yeah, so I mean that was very much then and even now, like still an ongoing process. Like before, I didn't really have any um, knowledge around like how to build websites, like build front ends, and that was something that I'd wanted to do because Dune's great, and other tools like Flipside and Transpose and all of these, like these are all really great platforms. You can just go and do all of your work in one place and share it in one place, which is great. Um, but like, I have this thing that I want to do in terms of like making stuff on my own sites that I own myself, whether that's like analytics things or things that like aren't analytics related. And that requires picking up new stuff, which was a struggle because like I like SQL is great, the language they use to write queries on Dune, and like Python's cool, but a lot of the front end stuff is in JavaScript, and JavaScript is the devil's tongue, man. Like I still don't understand what's going on half of the time. So that was really just like, if I don't share some stuff publicly, then there's no motivation for me to do anything. Like Twitter's great because like people like somebody is going to see it if you put it on Twitter. So if you say you're going to do something, even though you know that people don't care, it's a nice thing of like, oh shit, I've said I've done it, so now I need to actually keep up with it. And yeah, that was good for like learning some more of the front end stuff to like get closer to like that goal of like, being able to make my own things outside of their like, data platform ecosystem, like the Dune, Flipside, so on ecosystem.
Right. So you took it on basically to like to learn,
Yeah.
as you should, and use Twitter, even though it's a even though it's a not super great after spending most of your time on as a way to gauge accountability and all the more that you were able to complete the challenge, right? So can we expect more of these apps moving forward then for this year?
Oh yeah, definitely, 100%. And I mean, this year I'll probably, I definitely will do a lot more like basic app tutorials. So it's just like if you want to make a data app outside of like making a Dune dashboard or making a Flipside dashboard, like you want to make a completely separate data app or data bot of some sort, like I'll probably do more tutorials around that. And like once again, like the tutorials will really just be a thing of oh well, if I have to explain it to somebody else, then like I'll understand it better myself. And yeah, there's still like a lot of things I need to figure out there. I like I basically am at the stage where I know basic like JavaScript, HTML, but I still don't know how React works. Basically, there's like so much stuff I just still don't understand. So the tutorials will be good for me to like figure all of that out.
Right. And I'm sure it'd be helpful for people who will eventually come across your work. Did you have a favorite among these 12 that you built last year?
What was the favorite? I think that the huh. That's a good question. I mean, they were all good for different things. I think that the most interesting one was pseudo subvision, which was this site I made for like you could click around and investigate different pseudoswap pools, like how much money they were making and their impermanent loss and stuff. I actually don't think that pseudoswap vision will be working right now. I haven't checked because there's been some updates to the data sets that I was using. I need to actually, that would be one of the things I need to do this year, is like give pseudoswap vision like a revamp and actually you know, yeah, just improve it and update it and do all of that. But I think pseudoswap vision was the most interesting one because Rob's another like data wizard, and Andrew as well is also a pretty well-known data wizard. Rob and Andrew and I were working on, when pseudoswap first launched, there weren't any tables on Dune for it, so we worked on tables on Dune, and then I used the Dune API to build the pseudoswap vision app. That was like a long process of like, have to make the tables on Dune first, and then have to make the backend for the web app, and then make the front end, and then kind of a whole process behind it. But it was definitely, I think that was the most interesting one for sure. Oh, actually, I just checked. I think, yeah, pseudoswap vision actually is still working. So yeah, that's pseudoswap.vision was the app. I thought it would be down by now, but yeah, that's cool.
And for those that are interested in checking out these projects, I think we can drop a link in the text box section of the Twitter space. If not, we can do it after. But yeah, definitely check out those projects, including pseudoswap vision. Um, you mentioned earlier 0x Trends, your newsletter, and you actually have a related uh, dashboard or work that you built called Trending Contracts, which lists out the top contracts in different chains according to transactions, active addresses, and gas spent. Could you give us an insight on why you built this dashboard and who was its intended audience?
Yeah, so I guess there's like a lot of practical stuff, but I guess the kind of the big idea behind like looking at trending usage is, I think that especially when we're in the bear market and like we kind of exit that up only environment, and you know people get a little bit disillusioned about like crypto and all that. There's kind of this core question of like, what are we here for? Like, why are we even bothering with crypto? And I mean, for me, the answer is just kind of really lies in the stuff of, you know, so not the like Ponzinomics stuff and the like, just like um, totally like speculative trading and all that, but it's just like, what are the apps that people are actually using day to day? Like, what's actually getting used and why are people using it? I think that to me is kind of the most interesting answer to that question. So I mean, that's the kind of I guess the big idea of like why pay attention to stuff that's trending and like why give that like airtime is just like, what are people using and why are they using it, and like that's where like you kind of find the answer of like, what's the point of crypto today. And then on a very practical basis, like it's just a kind of a shortcut thing, right? Because I mean, I used to work in VC, and a lot of the stuff that you do when you're working as a partner to VC firm is like trying to find new projects before other VCs find new projects, and like talking to that team first and building that relationship and figuring out if there's something there, and supporting new teams. And so like, just looking at on it, crypto is great because there's no other industry where you can just look at on-chain data to actually find like, this is a new project that somebody's actually using, and then do more investigation into why they're using it and like find stuff early. So I mean, that was from the VC context, but like, I don't know if you're trading, which I don't do, but if you're like a more of a short-term trader, like finding some new project that's getting real usage and like, trading on that before like the narrative pops off on crypto Twitter and the token pumps, like can be a good way to make money for sure. Or like if you're at some team that like sells products to other protocols and like you're on the sales team, you know, finding like new potential customers while they're still small and like hooking them before they become like a big deal is good. Or a lot of people give different teams like kudos for like being good at business development in terms of the alt L1s and the L2s that's attracting apps to their ecosystems. And yeah, I mean, if I was working at an L2 or an alt L1, I'd be paying a lot of attention to what are the hot apps that people are using now that are like still early, that are growing, that like I can bring them to my ecosystem, and that killer app can make a huge difference. Because I mean, right now Arbitrum is getting a lot of usage in terms of like the L2 race, and that's mostly driven by GMX. Like the difference that one killer app
Yep.
can make in terms of like whose ecosystem is popping off and whose isn't is huge. And like we saw that in other places, like there was a period of time when like Axie Infinity had its own chain, and Axie Infinity's like side chain thing was making had way more usage than like the vast majority of Alt L1s and L2s, and it only had one app, and that
Yep.
was enough. Or like Avalanche had Kravada for a bit, and that was driving most of the usage. Or DeFi Kingdoms on Harmony was driving all of the usage on Harmony, and nobody uses Harmony anymore because that was literally the only reason anybody would bridge there. But yeah, I think that there's like a lot of like tactical, like regardless of what job you're doing, day-to-day stuff, where like just knowing what stuff is being used and why is like very directly correlated to like success or whatever, however you'd measure that. So I find that sort of stuff super interesting.
Yeah, yeah, definitely agree. Like putting the spotlight on projects that are being used, and just to answer the question, like, what's the point of crypto today, right? Outside of just speculation and Ponzinomics. And no, I do not trade. Don't know how. And I just I'll probably just end up losing a lot of money. But yeah, and I definitely agree. Like, it's a good tool to find early promising projects. It's good for VCs, as you mentioned, to get into deals earlier. Good for biz dev and sales teams to scope out new apps and projects. And yeah, it's a pretty good way to have like a quick insight on like where are people putting their hours in, or what are people using, etc. Um, and how has this been like as this dashboard helps with your workflow with 0x trends as you write it? Like, how has this dashboard helped like complement or supplement your new newsletter?
Yeah, so the dashboard, I mean, it's funny because the dashboard is kind of like a public, like, or anybody can start with that and do some investigation. But I actually use like a bit more complicated queries for my newsletter because, um, yeah, for the newsletter, like it's kind of a more of a curated product. So the dashboard is like anybody can go like do some investigation for yourself, try and find some stuff. Whereas the newsletter is more curated in terms of I am mostly focusing on products that are early. So I'm not going to talk about like Uniswap is like growing in usage or I don't know Aave or something because everybody knows about those. So it's stuff that is yeah, stuff that's earlier on, and of course, like, cause it's focusing on products, I'm like excluding, NFTs and ERC20s because it's just like an NFT project or like some new token isn't necessarily a product. So
Mhm.
it's like focusing on products, focusing on stuff that's early, and there's like also like more like subjective curation of like what I think is interesting. Like I don't really think that you know um uh another Uni V2 fork that just has like some crazy token incentives is really like an interesting thing to cover, even if like it gets a lot of usage because they're paying people to use it. Um, so yeah, I think that the trend dashboard is interesting, but the newsletter is like I use like more advanced queries for that, and I like filter a lot more stuff manually for writing the newsletter.
Right, right. So the dashboard's like a peak or just some public-facing tool just to gauge, maybe attract some interest. But the newsletter is more curated, more sophisticated, and all this to say, long way of saying that, you should definitely subscribe if you want them. They're they're really peek into to what's going on in the crypto space by Kofi. Uh, you mentioned as well earlier on that you almost joined L2 and you're very interested in L2s. You mentioned also as well uh, in the training contracts you've seen like a lot of L2s are gaining adoption, very be like through a singular project or like multiple projects. It's a good segue to one of your other top works is on RollUp Economics. You covered things such as revenues, costs, profits, etc. on these different rollups or L2 scaling solutions. Can you give us an insight on what's the current state of rollups or L2s these days and their wider adoption?
Yeah, so I think that rollups are interesting because in my mind they're just I don't really at the moment see why somebody would spin up a new blockchain as opposed to spinning up a rollup. Simply because, I mean, if you spin up a new chain, you need to you convince a bunch of validators to start validating on your network, and you need to have another token that is tied to the success of your network. And there's just you need to attract liquidity, and you need to attract developers, and you need to do all this stuff. Whereas rollups benefit, of course, from just being part of the Ethereum ecosystem. It's just you don't need to worry about security. Well, if you're a full rollup. A lot of the rollups we have now are still working towards being full rollups with proper
Mhm.
fraud proofs and validity proofs and all that. But if you're a full rollup, don't need to worry about security. Security is handled, and you're part of the Ethereum ecosystem. So you kind of have the goodwill, or the kind of you're part of that already existing ecosystem of apps and developers and users who are kind of in the Ethereum ecosystem. So rollups make a lot of sense, and I mean on on chain, they're also pretty reasonably good businesses in some ways. So if you're a roll up network, the costs that you have to pay is the cost of posting data to L1. In terms of on-chain costs, not off-chain costs of course, all of these foundations are paying their employees and running hardware and stuff. But on-chain, the only cost that they have is posting data to L1, and they're making all of this revenue from transaction fees, and there's a gap there. And so you end up with the situation where the L2s that we have now on chain at least are making millions and millions of dollars a year pretty well, and that's in hard currency, I would call it. That's like an ETH, not in some random coin that has no liquidity, or some token where oh, it looks good because you've got a bunch of your token in your treasury. But if you try to sell even 10% of that, you completely crash the value to zero, and all of your token holders would be angry at you. No, they're making millions and millions of dollars in a good major currency, and yeah, I just find that pretty interesting. I mean, right now Arbitrum's kind of peeking out in front of the race in terms of usage, mostly because people really like GMX, people like trading perps. I'm not a perps trader, don't understand really the kind of
Yeah.
the whole process behind that, apart from the data. But people really seem to like that app, so that's been great for them. Optimism are close behind because they've launched the token, so they've got the advantage of now they can do token incentives, joint token incentive schemes with apps, which is this is the tried and true playbook. 2021, when things started to really pop off with the Alta One rotation trade. The playbook that it was kind of Polygon is the first team that really said that playbook of oh, attract new apps and then do joint liquidity mining with those apps. So early on, Polygon was bringing on apps like Aave and stuff, and it was oh, you could use Aave on Polygon to earn some Matic tokens, and that really helped to really boost the usage of those apps. And that was a playbook that was copied by Avalanche, and that was copied by Solana, and it just it it works. If you have incentives, that gives people a reason to bridge over and start using your stuff. And a lot of that capital is mercenary. When the incentives run out, they'll just leave. But it's kind of a cost of acquisition, right? You're paying a cost to bring folk in, and then if the apps are actually any good, then maybe when the incentives end, some of them will stay. And that playbook was directly what led to Matic going 100x, and the usage on Polygon exploding, and same thing happening to Solana, and same thing happening to Avalanche. And yeah, it will be interesting to see how well that works with optimism now that we're in the bear market, and token incentives don't pump as hard as they used to,
Mhm. Yeah. Yep.
but yeah, there's lots of interesting stuff to watch in L2s for sure.
Mhm. And how do you think how more? Hmm. What do you think we can expect from these L2s in the coming year, and how important are they for crypto adoption as a whole? It's a narrative that we keep hearing for a long time now, and for with good effect. It's not like it's just like pulled out of thin air in terms of like the narrative, but what how important do you think they are for crypto adoption as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's like a there's there's a two-tier thing to this. I mean, directly like the obvious thing or the clear thing is that using Ethereum by doing transactions on a rollup is much cheaper than using Ethereum mainnet. That's kind of the main value proposition, right? And it's cool because I mean, 2021 when this like particular like bull market was really in full swing and like people were you know trading JPEGs like on mainnet and paying in some cases like somebody would have like some hot NFT mint.
So while we wait again, we just want to mention some of the things we have planned this week. We have a variety of webinars. Oh, Kofi, you're back. So we have a variety of webinars and then etc. We'll drop by the links later on. But yeah, crazy, right? You've hosted more Twitter Spaces than me for sure, but that was the first time I got rugged.
Yeah, no, it happened. It's so weird that like, yeah, with the new Elon Twitter, it's just like you come on every day and they're like changing the app or like they're trying to, yesterday there was the whole thing of like people couldn't tweet because like they were getting the error message of you've done too
Yeah,
many
yeah, it
tweets
happened to
this
me.
week. Like, yeah, which is insane. Or like I was trying to DM somebody and the DM wouldn't go through. And they've done this weird thing where they've got like the for you and the following on the same page. Like it's just strange, man. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah,
what the plan is there, but yeah, it happens.
yeah. Yesterday I was trying to reply to like some of the tweets, and I couldn't send a reply. I thought it was like something to do with the emojis I was using, or like I can't use the word like clutch or blanket or whatever. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, we'll see. It definitely is like the time when all of the other like decentralized social people are kind of in waiting in the wings, like, oh, come and use app instead, use like Lens or Farcast or whatever. But it's just that I mean, it's too bad. Like most of the people who I think post interesting stuff are on Twitter and post the stuff on Twitter, and so at least for now, it's kind of like we're trapped. Even if I wanted to move, I can't really move. Type vibes. So yeah, we're just stuck in it for the time being.
Yeah, we need a roll up for Twitter. Um, Again, I guess going back, uh, we were mentioning roll-ups and crypto adoption being pushed for or like being piggybacking off these L2s. Um,
Oh yeah, there was
how important? Yeah,
one more point I was going to make in terms of like I think apart from like very practically like in this bull run we lost a lot of money unnecessarily as users because like gas fees were really high but people wanted to use anyway and that wouldn't have happened if all of the activity was on rollups instead. Like if all of those hot NFT mints had been happening on Optimism, people would have still lost money, but they would have lost less money than they lost. But there's also like an interesting thing for analysts in terms of like it will be interesting to see how all of the like new roll up token incentive schemes like influence usage and stuff. I think that there'll be some interesting stuff to look into in terms of like if your optimism or when Arbitrum eventually drops some token, Arbitrum, like how do you use your token to incentivize real usage? And like the people like I mean with Quest and all of this, optimism is trying to run experiments around that and like see how different methods are like more effective and stuff. And yeah, I think there'll be some cool lessons to learn there about like whatever the Web3 crypto marketing acquisition funnel looks like compared to normal stuff.
yeah, definitely agree that it's definitely more cost effective, especially for new users who aren't used to paying for gas in general, like the concept of gas fees and exorbitantly high amount of gas at that, especially in bull markets. And yeah, A lot more incentive schemes can be developed on L2s, as we've seen you mentioned with arbitrum and optimism. Experiments are coming out, so we'll see what works and what we learn.
Yeah, to be good.
Yeah. Now, changing pace a bit and related to crypto adoption, I want to talk to you about something you're quite passionate about, which is crypto adoption in the developing world. You've tweeted about Nigerians and their difficulty in when it comes to online subscription payments. You tweeted about Ghanaians and their pensions being mishandled by their government. You actually also tweeted about hoping for a West African crypto exchange that your grandma can use, through the use of her phone or SMS. So it's not like this is a narrative you just choose to adopt recently for the heck of it. It's clearly something that you want to happen for a long time. I want to ask, like, what is it about you or an aspect of your life that has led you to be this passionate about it?
Yeah, so I'm from Ghana, and you know, right now at the moment I'm living in London. I've been in London for 2 years, but I mean, yeah, vast majority of my life I was living at home in Ghana, and it's kind of like I always find it interesting when like people have the discussion of like what's the point of crypto and stuff like that, because uh, yeah, to be honest, I don't really think that there is like a huge like kind of painful need or like existential need for crypto if you live in say like the UK or the US or Europe or somewhere like that. Because I mean, yeah, your bank might be screwing you over somewhat, but at least your bank works. Like you can get
Yeah,
a loan that has like a reasonable interest rate, and like you can put money in a savings account. And I mean, if you want to trade some stocks or something like that, you can do that fine. Whereas like all of those things are just like not, those just aren't things that like the average Ghanaian can do. Like where I'm from, there's no such thing. If you're an average Ghanaian with a normal Ghanaian income, there's no such thing as getting a savings account that like pays you interest. That's not real. Or like, you know, if you try and get a loan, like the rates that you get are like some insane rates and stuff like that. Like just really basic stuff just doesn't work. And so I like when I think about like the point of crypto, for me, the point of crypto is more leaning towards like folk like where I'm from, where just like the normal financial stuff doesn't work. But hey, I mean, there's this other huge like international financial system that if you have an internet connection, like you can just plug in and you can use it, and you don't need to have like some documentation papers or whatever. So I mean, that's always been like one of the main reasons why I found crypto interesting. And yeah, I mean, just recently I've been posting about it a little bit more. But yeah, it's just kind of my motivation there.
yeah, I hear you. Coming from the developing world as well, it's what attracted me to crypto. Also, when I first used Uniswap without having to do KYC, I was able to trade assets. Not like I'm doing sketchy stuff, that I deserve to invent KYC, but I just imagined like how could this be super helpful in places where the banking system just doesn't work, and that you mentioned like loan interest rates are very high. There's no concept of like savings accounts or yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that people say in the developed world or in the West take for granted, and what the crypto critics somehow overlook is that the users aren't necessarily the ones who are already in abundance when it comes to the banking system or something just works. It's people from the developing world and who have no alternatives, but crypto can present that alternative. Granted, there's still a lot of things to fix, but that's what we're working towards. So really glad to hear that your motivation comes from something intrinsic and something very dear to you.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And I mean, yeah, the kind of the latest saga, like if you're from Ghana, that like we're in this position now where the government has started to default on bonds, and that's messing up
Mm,
with people's pensions. And yeah, DeFi is not the perfect place in terms of security yet. We still have a lot of trouble around hacks and like, different teams rugging and stuff like that. But in like DeFi, there's at least some potential of working towards a state of DeFi where, you really can just trust, you know, the smart contracts that you're depositing money into. And if there is a problem, it like isn't a problem of like, oh, some individual person just got corrupt and stole your money. Like it would be a technical issue, and technical issues can be fixed, but like human greed can't be fixed. Like if there's an opportunity to steal money, humans are always going to steal money from each other. But you can like it is possible to write code that doesn't just like steal your money on a regular basis. So yeah, definitely keen to see that develop.
Yeah, I like that point. Technical issues can be fixed, but human nature and greed cannot, sadly. Um, in your opinion, though, like how can we, in the crypto data space specifically, help drive this increased adoption in the developing world for crypto?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard question because it's like that's like kind of increasing adoption in places that aren't like US, UK, Europe. Um, is like just like a multifaceted thing in terms of like a lot of it I feel has just to do with um, having more products in the space that are trying like making a concerted effort to like target a more international audience in terms of like doing stuff like on the ground, like in person, and like um, you know, designing apps that like don't assume that like somebody like has fast internet and also is like pretty familiar with Web2 paradigms. Like a lot of the folk in my parents' generation, like their idea of like what the internet is that like WhatsApp is the internet, basically. Like for my mom and dad, WhatsApp is the internet, and maybe like for the ones who are more savvy, like they're on Facebook or something like that. But it's just I think that the UI UX like experiences, like if you kind of want to expand outward a bit, kind of just need to shift from the kind of UIs that nerds like us would like people in DeFi making UIs that look like some Windows 64 like skin with dark mode and like matrix font and all of this stuff. Like that's cool. Like if you want to target like 18 to 25-year-old like nerds in the developed world, but like if you want to target other sorts of people, you kind of need to make different product decisions, right?
Yeah.
um, and like the data analysts are part of that, but that's kind of like an everybody thing, right?
Mhm.
um, and I think that like it's not just I think that one of the things that's like important is to talk about is that it's not just some like, I don't know, what's the word, some altruistic like, oh, do it for the good of the world, like make products for the developing world, or like some charity thing. Like it's just genuinely there will be much bigger and much more important products that will be built when DeFi can tap into larger markets. And we saw some inkling of that when Axie Infinity was still in full swing, because Axie Infinity had a very like bad token model that was pretty much like paying existing users by like taking money from new users, like kind of pyramid scheme style.
Yeah.
So Axie Infinity itself wasn't a sustainable product. But what they did do well was that they had like a kind of an in-person network of like folk who are like on the ground in different countries, like in the Philippines and stuff, setting up basically internet cafes and teaching people how to play the game and teaching people how to like get their money out and exchange it for fiat, and like doing a lot of yeah, basically like targeted in-person stuff. And the result of that was that at its peak, actually had millions of users and was doing billions of dollars of volume a month. Like numbers that the vast majority of DeFi apps haven't seen, and like they're never going to see those numbers because like shit. Like if you're just targeting the same 1,000 folk on Twitter, you're going to have 1,000 users. Like you're not going to have millions of users.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like not some charity like, oh, do it for the sake of the world. Like genuinely, if you want millions of users and you want to make billions of dollars, targeting and like making a concerted effort to like onboard more people in a place where DeFi is actually a need as opposed to just like a speculation thing. So
Mhm.
people in developing countries is like the way to get there, as opposed to um just like, yeah, circulating the same like hot potato between like the same crypto Twitter people.
Yeah. So a more considered effort to target those really need the product, right? And as I guess as data people in the space, we can only guide what works and what doesn't, maybe before or after the fact, but we can support these efforts by these product teams as they build, I know, more helpful and more useful products. Um, as we wind down the interview, uh, which unfortunately got cut in the middle, thanks, Elon. Um, looking towards the coming year or the year we are in, 2023. 2022 for you was a year of changes and challenges. You mentioned in the DeFi Llama 2022 year review Twitter space that you want to make a lot of cool stuff with cool people in the data field for 2023. What type of projects do you have in mind, and who are the type of people, or who do you want to collaborate with?
Yeah, so I'm still figuring that out. I mean, I definitely want to do, like I said, more tutorials and stuff. I definitely want to look a lot more into Ethereum staking data, so I'm going to be bothering you a lot, like sending you a lot of really stupid DMs
Uh,
in the coming
won't be a
future. Like
bother. No, it
that's the
won't be a
next.
bother. Don't worry about it.
Right. Yeah, because definitely the next like larger article I want to write will be like the Ethereum staking one, because with Shanghai coming up, that would be an interesting one to do. And just like same as always, lots of NFT stuff and lots of DeFi stuff, and really, I mean, yeah, I just want to, in terms of like who people like, to me, anybody who just wants to make interesting stuff and actually ship fast is cool. And that's kind of really what I yeah, just want to put more stuff out there. Um, oh, and there was also a thing before the first Twitter Space rugged. I saw that there was like a question that like F Carver had posted like underneath the tweet.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
go.
Purple Egg in the comments that I thought was an interesting one to talk about, because I think they were asking about like whether or not it's too late to like get into on-chain data analysis stuff, or like how long does it take to become an on-chain data analyst. And I think that there is actually really good news here, in the sense that it doesn't take that long. There just
Mhm.
aren't that many people who are doing on-chain analysis stuff. So, I mean, genuinely, if anybody's interested in like getting started in all that sort of stuff, it's like the it's it's a lot faster than you think. I mean, I think about folk like we've got accounts now like DeFi Mochi, who like only just started posting about on-chain data stuff in November or something, and already has more followers than me today, like posting on-chain like data threads all the time. Or
Follow
like
the
we've got,
emoji.
yeah, follow DeFi Mochi, or you know, I was chatting to this nice guy who's his Twitter handle is Panda Jackson, and he wrote a really great thread last week about Blur, what Blur's doing to like circumvent OpenSea's block list. And that thread did amazingly. Like basically, it's just like there are lots of people who are getting lots of traction on crypto Twitter, putting out on-chain data stuff, who like, it's not like they've been around for 5 years or 3 years or something like that. Like literally, folk just start in and put out interesting stuff consistently, and like within 6 months, like you'll start getting interesting DMs and interesting opportunities and all of that. And you know it's part of it is just the thing of you know there's a lot of educational material now, a lot more than when I started. There's Dune. If you check the Dune Analytics Twitter, like in the pinned tweet, there's a lot of tutorials in there. If you check out the flip side Twitter or Metrics DAO um, uh, Discord, there'll be a lot of educational, but there's so much educational material. Like you can just study just enough to make the first thing that you're interested in, and then share that, and then study enough to make the next thing, and then share that. Just make things and then share things. And yeah, honestly, like the people who like are really going hard on that stuff and just kind of consistently doing it, like I would say like 6 months. 6 months, interesting things start happening. Like if you're into that sort of thing. So yeah, it's never too late. In fact, it's not early for other things, but for on-chain analysis stuff, it's still really, really early.
Yeah. Definitely agree. It's not too late. We're still early, even people keep hearing that, but it really is like as usage and adoption, and as we see more trending contracts in Kofi's dashboard, the data will scale along with usage. So there's a lot of demand for quality analysts, data scientists, data professionals, what have you. And yeah, lots of, and you're right, definitely agree that there are a lot more educational materials these days from shout out metrics now, of course. There's a lot of courses that we have for people who want to get into the space. So yeah, to what was his name? To the person who asked that question, definitely not too late. Get started today and just keep grinding, learn and grind. And as Kofi said, maybe in 6 months, you never know. But it looks bright, like the future for data people in the space. Speaking of data tools and data people in the space, you had a Twitter thread this past December on what advice you'd give to new crypto infrastructure projects. You mentioned in rule number two that the most important differentiator is to have a more accurate interpretation layer than the rest, and that everyone's interpretation layer is wrong, and every single data company selling NFT data, DeFi data, on-chain data is wrong. Could you expound further what you mean by this? Because on the surface, it sounds like you're saying all the platforms we're using have bad data and we're screwed as data people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think that like if you start working with all of these products enough, you'll start to realize that everybody's inaccurate, but it's just kind of a matter of like how inaccurate is it? Like,
Mhm.
I think that, say a table like NFT trades on Dune is maybe, maybe it's well, like 1% wrong or 2% wrong, which can be fine for some stuff. Like, if you just want to get like an overall number of how much volume has been traded this month. Like, if it's 1% off, it doesn't really matter that much for like understanding the scale of like what's happening. But I don't know, maybe if you're trying to do something more niche, then maybe that becomes more of a problem. Um, but yeah, I think that it's kind of an ongoing like rat race for the analyst community and like all of the different tools to basically be like on the one hand, every single day there are new projects coming up and you want to add those new projects to your data set. So like if it's NFT trades on Flipside or on Dune, you know, Blur comes out, you want to add it, and Flipside comes out, you want to add it, but then OpenSea has made an upgrade. You need to upgrade, and then this person has changed this into you need to add all this new stuff, and then at the same time you need to validate it and like make sure that your table is accurate. And
Right,
it
right.
validation is like a really like long and like difficult job in terms of like just using the tables a lot and then finding mistakes, and then fixing those mistakes and finding other mistakes and fixing those mistakes. And when you're upgrading stuff at the same time as you're validating, it just becomes harder. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it's just a big effort and it's just a lot of trouble. So it's like something that community actively working on for the platforms where stuff is open source, and for the platforms where stuff isn't open source, and they're kind of working with customers and stuff, like just being
Yeah.
good at validation is a big differentiator between one team and another team. Like I've heard about more than one occasion speaking to friends of times when like, oh, somebody considered buying somebody's product and then they found a mistake and they were like, why is there this mistake? And the team just couldn't explain it. They're just trying to figure it out. And that's, you immediately lost a customer. Like that person is just going to use something else. So yeah, validation is hard, and everyone's
Mhm.
working on it.
Yeah, I hear you. Someone who's working in that space as well. But yeah, as you mentioned, the data from the blockchain, you can trust it. Um, uh, the numbers again don't lie, but how you interpret it, how you make sure that how you represent the data is where the work is, right? It's not that the data on the blockchain is incorrect or we're screwed as analysts, but more on the work. There's additional work to be done on how you interpret the data and how you clean the data sets and what you surface as insights to your audience. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's just kind of like, as you're saying, if you are running some node and getting data from that, like raw logs and traces, they'll probably be right. But then it's once you try and interpret like, oh, which one of these transactions is an NFT trade, and what was the royalty on it, and who was the buyer and who was the seller, and what marketplace was on, and was it through an
Yeah.
aggregator or was it not through an aggregator? Once you're trying to figure out all of that other stuff, then that's where like the room for error comes in terms of like, um, you know, something as simple as, oh, there was a mistake in your code, or that platform has upgraded now, so the rule that you made before is no longer true, or
Yeah.
you missed this edge case, somebody did a flash loan or something you didn't expect, and now that's messing with your table. Yeah, just kind of lots of, just hand to hand combat type stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So the bad news is there's a lot of work to be done in the crypto data space, but the good news is there's a lot of work to be done. So it's definitely not too
Yeah,
late to get in.
yeah.
Yeah. So as we close out, or before we jump into some live questions, I want to ask, like, aside from adopting crypto again as the term as opposed to Web3 to refer to our space, what is the biggest change this year that you're hoping to see in the industry, like crypto data or the crypto space in general?
Changes I'd like to see this year. This year, I would like to see less hacks. I would like there to be
Don't we all?
less less rug and less like basic like, oh, somebody just forked an old version of Compound, and we all know that Compound has this like, you know, um flash loan reentrancy vulnerability, and you've just used the same thing again, and you got hacked the exact same way. Like, at least read up on, if you're going to fork something, at least read up on what happened to it before. Just basic things. Like, if somebody comes up with some elaborate gigabrain 1 in a million exploit of some protocol, which is rarely the case, then like, I'm just like, oh, that's a mistake we can learn on and we can move on from there. But like, we just lose too much money to just stuff that's just like, oh, somebody was keeping the seed phrase in like a .txt file on a server somewhere, and it was unencrypted, and somebody could just read it and then take all the money. Yeah, like, if I'm I would just say that, like, if somebody is going to steal money in 2023, at least make them work hard for it. Ideally, we don't get hacked at all, but if you are going to get hacked, at least let it be like, oh, they had to be a gigabrain to do it, and not just some basic, you didn't validate that only the owner of the contract could call this function, or you didn't put a reentrancy lock on something, or you didn't keep your private keys well. Just basic stuff, man. That's really all I'm looking for.
Yeah. Let's get smarter as users and safer as project developers, I guess. Let's not repeat the same mistakes we've been doing. And good thing we have data on this, like some of the lessons learned. So yeah, I definitely agree. Let's all get smarter as a space this coming year and be safer out there as users and project developers alike. Now, do we have anyone who wants to ask live questions? Or if you're a bit shy, any questions you want to leave in the comments so we can ask Kofi? Uh, Going once, going twice. All right. Looks like no questions, but if you think about them later on, you know where to reach Kofi. Kofi, can you reach you via DMs or is that too busy? How should they reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, usually, DMs are fine. I am slow sometimes because like my inbox is kind of a mess. Like, with all of these upgrades that they're trying to make to Twitter, like, if they could just do a bit better on the like inbox DM stuff, like, I don't know, could make you let you make folders or something, that would save me a lot of time. But yeah, I am reachable by DMs, and I do try to answer stuff, even if I'm sometimes bad about it. But that's the easiest way to reach me.
All right. So if you have any questions, burning questions, reach out to Kofi. His inbox may be a mess just like every once, I guess. Uh, so don't get mad at him if he doesn't take if he takes a while to respond. Before we close out, again, just some quick announcements. We'll have an intro webinar on us. Meaning Metrics, that will have an intro webinar on Ethereum and Cosmos next week. link in the comments. We have more courses if you want to get into the crypto data space. As Kofi mentioned, it's not too late. We'll post a link to the overview of our courses in the comments again. You can also join us on Mondays and Wednesdays at Flipside Crypto's Twitter Spaces as a listener or a speaker. Join the Discord or follow us on Twitter to get to know more about these things and find out what's in store. Talk to anyone from the growth team or Helix specifically. He will not bite. Uh, I'd like to thank the audience again. Thanks for listening in, playing that X metric, and to unlock many challenges and more. And of course, thank you, Kofi, for sharing with us some very valuable insights and some of the most interesting looks behind what you do and how you produce your work, your writings, your analyses, and your very informative threads. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. Till next time.
Yeah, until next time, everyone, happy querying and stay safe out there.